Let's talk about the hyper-aggressive changes to the format, because I don't know if you guys ever pay attention, but formats do change very rapidly within the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Mystic Mine has definitely been one of those things that's taken a back seat for sure. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out more awesome content. So what's going on with the shape of the format right now? You know, we've definitely been looking at the way that the game is going right now, and a lot of us are very, very upsetty spaghetti with no ban list. But that doesn't mean that we don't see twists and turns within the metagame. The biggest change that is definitely stuck around as of late was Eradicator Epidemic Virus entering into the format as a possible out to pure Mystic Mine decks. I would say the last 2 weeks of events, now that people figured out how to do, you know, Curious Nightmare Griffin, set up the Eradicator Epidemic Virus, which, by the way, that play is very punishable by Nibiru. If you see somebody setting up Eradicator Epidemic Virus here, Space Rock tears that play apart, alright? Also, Nightmare Griffin can't be tributed because it's not a dark monster. So if you're one of those people, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I've heard a few cheating stories from people that just kind of didn't catch that. And I just wanted to say that, you know, you can't do that. Alright, so just a wee little bit of a heads up there. That's not how that works. But since we've seen Eradicator Epidemic Virus show up into the format here, Mystic Mine decks have taken a backseat, but that doesn't stop Sword Soul from actually taking advantage of that. Now, we'll talk about Sword Soul in a second here, but on the counterplay to seeing the Eradicator Epidemic Virus start to take over, now that we can see, you know, a tier player going through the combo here, you know, to set up for the Eradicator Epidemic Virus, that's where you see Space Rock be that counterplay. How many summons have you been through? Okay, cool. Space Rock nuke your entire field. All right, that's like become the counterplay. Like, yeah, Eradicator became like tier's like go-to built-in engine to handle things, and then you had Space Rock. It's like, oh, that's a real shame. You know, you're going to go through all of these motions just to get Nibiru. It's actually kind of one of the cool things that we've seen with Nibiru entering back into the format here as a big hand trap, is just it creates such a vacuum, like explosion for like the tier board, that it's actually crazy. Now, obviously, Sprite doesn't give two craps about the engine, because they're going to be like, oh, hey, we're both locked into, you know, level 2 Link 2s and stuff, so good luck Nibiruing me, man. So, Nibiru's counterplay actually is running around this way. Like, up until, like, the last couple weeks, you always heard players that were like, oh my god, you know, like, they're not playing around Nibiru. Like, they're playing into Nibiru. It's because Nibiru was, like, a card that a lot of people didn't really consider, you know, a card within the format, and it's definitely changed a little bit now that players are like, oh my gosh, like it's still here. Yes, it is. Now let's talk about Sword Soul. Off of OTS Championship weekend here, we saw Sword Soul actually kind of step back up to the metagame here and kind of show people that, hey, I can do something. Now, OTS Championships typically end up being basically just glorified locals at this point, but it was interesting to see that I think every Sword Soul list I saw was still playing Mystic Mine. Now, if a Sword Soul player gets Eradicator Epidemic Virus, I mean, so they're going to lose like a Searcher, so they lose their Rhoda, and I mean, okay, you hit some little side cards. I mean, they still have the entire 10E package. If you're Eradicatoring a Sword Soul player just to try to hit a Mystic Mine, I feel like you've got other problems that you really need to deal with at that point. I understand that, you know, Sword Soul entering back into the format doesn't really surprise anybody, because considering the fact that such a while back it was the best deck in the room. But what Sword Soul does in comparison to Tier and Sprite is very, very fair. Alright, like, you gotta understand that. But the fact that this has been the deck out of the weekend here that really just kind of caught me off guard with the amount of Mystic Mines that were present in it. I don't know. I'm shocked and I'm not shocked. I think at the end of the day that Mystic Mine being in other decks ends up being the problem. But if tier is just built in this out to handle every other version of the deck, and something like Sword Soul's like, what are you going to do, Eradicator me? And then, you know, the buff Sword Soul player just goes through full 10 Yi combo, not even caring about what the tier player has done. It's definitely, once again, the counter to the counter pick, all right? But overall, in terms of like rapid developments for your format, yeah, Space Rock showing back up now as a norm is a good thing. Tier builds going towards Eradicator in the main deck out of the last YCS forward was good. The interesting thing is, though, I'm starting to see a trend back off of that, actually. You know, we ramped up because we were so sick of Mystic Mine, but you also are seeing a cutback on the Eradicators in the main deck as well. It's almost like at this point the players are like, you know, the trend is here, but we don't really care about it at the end of the day. You know, you have the diversity options and changes here to kind of slow back the pace of the format. You know, Eradicator being one of those cards, Mystic Mine being one of those cards. Actually, Eradicator makes the format much faster because they just destroy the Mystic Mines, while the Mystic Mines are there to slow down the pace of the game. So overall, hyper rapid changes. Now, I do want to talk about Despia's place on the food chain here, because Despia has been creeping around some regionals here, actually kind of scaring people a little bit. And it's actually interesting because when you look at Despia as a whole, a lot of these Despia decks that have been having success really just look like former shells of themselves. You know, like the Fright for Patchwork stuff. It's just basically a fusion good stuff package deck where you just dump out all of these pieces on the field. You set up like a super big Guardian Chimera with like a Poly in the graveyard. Your opponent's going to be like, what am I supposed to do against this? You know, it's really weird small things like that. Also, like the deck having access to super polymerization and just being able to rip apart a field for no real reason is crazy, man. Do not underestimate what a very well-timed super polymerization can do. All right, that's what really makes this deck scary. Now, has this been like a huge sighting of Despia players? No, it hasn't. But when these Despia decks do creep into Top Cut, they do get the chance to do something. And I have seen a lot of them have been playing the branded Explosion trap card for like Christia, Scythe. Like, they're getting really, really cute in terms of the little niche interactions that they can do, because branded fusion giving you that ability to spot dump your very specific needed element into the graveyard is actually insane. And honestly, at the end of the day, when you can start to see these little changes within a deck, all you have to do is put branded Explosion in a deck and you have a chance to win a regional, according to some of the results and things that we've seen. All right, now Archlord Christia might be a little bit more timeful here out of the what was it? Was it the Alaska Regional a couple weeks back? But it is very hit or miss, all right? Branded Explosion doesn't guarantee you success, but if the branded deck just needed to adapt one card in terms of result changes, it's fine. So overall, Spell and Trap hate is up in the format. Oh, absolutely it is. Ever since Mystic Mine started showing its ugly head several weeks back, Cosmic Cyclones, Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster getting the chance to return back to the format was a very good thing. You're going to look at so many of these competitive side decks now, you're going to see Twin Twisters, Cosmic Cyclones, you know, things that clean up spells and traps. They're at an all-time high, and that's why we, like, I know a lot of people were upset with Mystic Mine in the very early stage of the format, but you have to remember that it does take time for a format to adapt, all right? You can be one person and be like, oh no, I got to adapt for, you know, Mystic Mine, and you can change your deck to adjust to that. But it takes time for the entire masses of an entire event, 1,000 people or so, to kind of get the idea of what needs to shift within the scope of the metagame here in order to adjust to push something like Mystic Mine into the back of the room. Now, Mystic Mine, once again, has not totally disappeared, all right? It's still running around in something like Sword Soul, like I mentioned previously in this video, which is not a bad thing, all right? But I would say that overall representation is at a low now. It's still a problem, though, when something like Sprite and Tier, like, I'm going to play one main deck copy of this. What are you going to do about it? Well, nothing, actually. That's where our issue still lies. But The format has underwent some pretty rapid evolutions in the last couple weeks. I'm not surprised to see this. I'm very happy to see the changes that we've been having happen within the scope of the game. And that is just overall what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Fun, when this game can keep up and change with the times. So guys, please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. And I will say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is definitely one of the most interesting, fun games out there, even if we still don't have a ban list. Alright guys, peace out. Have a good rest of your day. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.